There we go. Okay, let's move to our next session, because we're talking about innovation, entrepreneurs, cities, of course, and we're going to stay in the world of breakthrough. It's now time to explore the business models of tomorrow and see what disruptive technology has to do with this. Perhaps you might have visited some of the stands out there during the break. There was a really nice area called the Breakthrough Innovation Challenge. I mentioned some of this earlier. Experience SDG action. Did any of you go there? Connect with that? See some of the innovation? You know, we're talking about people who are at the cutting edge of thinking. Some of them are connecting with universities like Nestle and Cape Town University, you know, to help people like me who don't cook very well, who waste a lot of food. That app is coming next year. Well, it's now my pleasure to hand over to Mr. Alan Middleton, the CEO of PA Consulting Group. It's a core partner of the UN Global Compact Action Platform on breakthrough innovation for the SDGs. And he's going to facilitate a conversation with the next group of speakers. I'm going to name them. They're going to come up on stage. Patrick Thomas, you can give them a round of applause, CEO of Covestro. Jean Bennington Sweeney, Chief Sustainability Officer of 3M. And Alex Atzberger, President of SAP Ariba. SAP Ariba.
Hey, good.
On you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's very exciting following on from hearing about a great city and everything that's going on in that city to break through. This session is unashamedly looking at business and how business is looking to break through. And it's an optimistic session. I believe that business is being offered one of the greatest opportunities that we're likely to see in our business lifetime. And there's great value to be had for business out of doing so, both societal but also commercial. And there is no shame in that. We know that there's some 12 trillion of value to be seized over the coming years if we get this right. And yet right now we're falling short. And one of the reasons we're falling short is because most of the change is incremental. It's being delivered mostly within individual organizations, or at best in near supply chain. And what we believe is that we need to move towards a model of breakthrough innovation. And in moving to breakthrough innovation, look to move away from simply small changes to ones that transcend business models, create greater business models for the future, and deliver both the societal and economic outcomes that we can see within. It's a daunting challenge, for sure, but if we take the long view, we believe that continuing with business as usual is in fact a bigger risk to us all in business than pursuing breakthrough innovation. So I'm very lucky to be joined today with three, in my opinion, three of the greatest businesses in the world. And what I thought we would do is shape a conversation around four areas, asking each of you what you've done yourselves in your organizations to move forward with the SDGs and towards both societal and commercial success. So looking at breaking through, we're going to look at leadership and how you put breakthrough innovation at the top of your business. To look at how you make the SDGs a core part of your culture and breaking through a core part of your culture. New technology itself, because my opinion is that only by understanding these new technologies ourselves can we guide our businesses towards the future. And then finally, and probably most importantly in terms of the theme of today, how you're collaborating, not just within your own organization or in your near-term supply chain, but actually looking to partner and collaborate with others way beyond the normal bounds that you might have seen in the past. So that's the agenda. If we start with the leadership, Alex, if you don't mind, it's interesting. I've followed SAP for many years. Some 10 years ago, I watched you implement into your packages a lot of elements of sustainability to allow even reporting.
Yes.
And without being rude, it fell a bit flat at the time, and yet you're back with great energy. You know, what is it that SAP is doing right now?
Yeah, happy to get to that. But Ellen, I think this panel is only successful if we also get a standing ovation at the end of it. So we will do our best to just follow the mayor, which is a hard act to follow, to be honest. But to your question, something obviously has changed. Something has significantly changed between 2007-8 to today. And I felt the entire week here at the United Nations, you could feel the change. And I think it's that sustainability is no longer a nice to have. It actually has become the business. And I remember when first sustainability came up as a topic, companies reported separately on it. And then it became an integrated with the financial report. And there was a triple bottom line. But today there's just the bottom line. And it's driven by sustainability. And so when we, at SAP, we build the world's greatest enterprise software. And when we sit down with our customers and CEOs of companies, they think about what's the purpose of the business. And every speaker here on stage today talked about how do you attract talent into an organization? How do you get millennials to work for your business? How do you actually drive your consumer to buy from you and know what's in your product? And how do you obviously work in the regulatory environment and the changes that are around you? So I'm particularly responsible within SAP for our procurement solutions, for how you manage the supplier relationship. And what's interesting is last year, our fastest growing software package solution was actually around supplier risk, because companies want transparency into their supply chain. And this is something where today solutions, technologies, blockchain, artificial intelligence give you new capabilities that just didn't exist before. So coming here this week, I'm so fascinated by the conversations we're having that say, how can we use technology and digital to actually drive sustainable change? And so this is a very different world than 2008.
That's fantastic. Moving back further, Gene, if we go back as far as the 70s, I actually remember pollution prevention pays. It was a big 3M theme in the mid-70s. In fact, I think you were a great leader at the time. Can you tell us about what 3M are doing today in this space from a leadership perspective?
Well, we started our sustainability work really, as you mentioned, with pollution prevention pays, which was the outcome of the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, and the thinking that if we eliminate pollution at the source, then we don't have to pay to clean it up. And that program really incentivized our manufacturing and scientists to look for ways that we can improve our environmental footprint. And over the 40 years of the program, we've saved over $2 billion. So it's representative fact that we can use sustainability to actually save money. And so that program lives on, and it's a beginning of our thinking about how sustainability can not only be for products that drive environmental footprint reduction, but how we can enable new technologies to do different things that we haven't been able to do before. So we work closely with our customers to find the customer insights, to find the problems that they're trying to solve. And sometimes it's a problem that they don't even know they have, because they just assume that they can't solve it because it seems unsolvable. But that's where we bring 3M technology in to do different things and new things that can't otherwise be done, and create opportunities for our customers to do things with 3M technology in their products to accomplish new things.
That's great, thank you. Having gone back a little bit and back a little bit further, it's interesting, Patrick, I need to read this because I don't want to get it wrong, but you've committed as a business, you as CEO, that by 2025, you'll be dedicating 80% of your entire R&D budget towards the SDGs, which is stunning. I mean, it's very early. You're a very early adopter. You're pushing forwards and you're setting the scene. I'm a CEO. That would be a very bold remark for me to make. How on earth did you get your stakeholders on board? How do you keep them on side? And what do you think the strategic outcome will be of 80% of your R&D budget by 2025?
So in our business, we have roughly outgrown GDP year after year after year by substituting other materials. So our business model is based by substituting poorer performing materials through growth, and that requires innovation. And if you think about the big drivers of growth, we've been talking about them. They're the Sustainability Development Goals. These are what is driving lightweighting of vehicles. This is what is driving towards wind power, where we make materials for wind turbines. It's driving us towards better insulation in buildings, which is where we have a great level of expertise. So we've been using the the triple bottom line for a while as the metric in our research and development pipeline to really act as a stage gate. So we say if it doesn't meet PPP, then we don't go through the stage gate. We need 2 positives and 1 neutral to allow it to go through. Any negative against PPP, we drop the project because we know that it isn't a sustainable piece of business. It's as simple as that. So then we went back and started looking at our R&D pipeline and realized that more than 50%, roughly about 50% today, is already aligned with the SDGs. So what we're now doing is pushing even further. We're pushing beyond that to this 80% target. We believe it's important to set targets that are not necessarily easy to achieve. We want to set stretch targets. I was always told as a child, the biggest risk in life is you set yourself a target that you achieve. And what you don't know is what you could have achieved. So we believe that 80% is achievable. It's going to be tough to get there, but we're absolutely determined to reach that.
So you're breaking through with clear business purpose, and in fact, you're not saying you're wasting 80% of your R&D budget. It's a core part of your business for the future.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the luxury of going through an IPO recently, and IPOs are great because it gets you a chance to press the reset button on a company that's 80 years old, and it now feels like a startup. You know, we have sales of nearly 13, 14 billion euro and 16,000 people, but it feels like a startup company. And when you get that opportunity, it's a chance to say, right, what are we really here for? What is our purpose? And we have done a lot of work on clarity of purpose in the organization, and everybody's behind me. You know, echoing the previous panel, all the people who are our newest recruits are the most aligned with this as a process. And they were the ones who will take us there, no problem.
And we heard earlier that some businesses have difficulty in getting the analysts and the markets to understand this and to value it. Having been through an IPO, obviously the spotlight sits on you for the first few years.
Yeah.
Are you finding it easy to get this positive message across to the market?
Well, in the hundreds of roadshows that I've done and the hundreds of investors I've sat in front of, we have put integrated sustainability into our strategy on the first chart we show every investor. We actually had one investor who traveled right across Switzerland to meet us in Zurich for the roadshow, who only came because of his belief that one of our materials, which is performing with a much, much lower carbon footprint than metals, will be the secret to the future of a lot of car body parts and a lot of electronic parts. That's why he invested. As simple as that.
As we came on stage, Patrick gave each of us his business card, which he'll tell you what it's made out of in a moment, but it's indestructible, which I found remarkable. It's made of?
It's a carbon fiber composite made using polycarbonate. It's half the weight of aluminium, and it's roughly the same strength as stainless steel. And it's difficult to imagine until you feel it and try and bend it, just how rigid and structural it is, but it's an incredible material. It will allow electromobility with roughly half the body weight, but with the same surface finish, the same strength, the same ability to get the structure into a vehicle. And at the moment, it's already being used in laptops and things like that, which are used for military specifications, so you can drive a tank over it. You know, these are the new materials which are going to be important to deliver the sustainability development goals.
It's quite a challenge. I wonder if 3M will pick you up on that challenge to break the card.
Yeah, okay.
That's very good.
So Jean will be trying to break the card later. Jean, as a more established business, does the 3M leadership find it easy to articulate the SDG adherence as being part of core business to the wider market?
Well, certainly, we find the SDGs to be a great way to gain insight, as I mentioned before, what our customers are doing and thinking, and finding ways to create new culture of innovation. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, that's like a beginning point and really digging into finding out what the needs are. But we have a strong culture of innovation where our people have 15% of their time to dedicate to thinking about new things and different things and following their own ideas. So our R&D people have a set of time that they can give to each day that is not an objective that's been given to them by their management, but actually an idea that they have that they can further bring into a product idea or actual product. And that's where a lot of our innovations come from. And by learning about what others are doing, it's a great way to enable that. One example is glass bubbles, and you mentioned, Patrick, lightweighting. And our 3M technology to create little tiny glass bubbles that look like sand if you held them in your hand. But when we put them into car bodies and aircraft bodies, we replace other heavier materials and create energy efficiency and fuel savings for both car and airplanes. And so it's an incredible technology, has great strength, but is very lightweight. So it's an example of how innovation can go to in a different way, and using one technology that we were using for something else and then apply it to another need.
Fantastic. We're moving into culture. Let's move directly to culture. Patrick, you mentioned, first of all, you IPO'd out of Bayer, I believe, yeah, a few years ago. An 80-year-old startup, it's a great term, and it gave you a reset. I guess it allowed you to put a whole new culture message, at least, into the firm. Can you talk about the opportunity it's given you, the culture change perhaps you've driven, and how you drive breakthrough innovation across the organization as a result of that strong culture?
Yeah, we were very lucky because one of the things we were desperate to hold on to was the Bayer culture or Bayer culture of innovation. So we had an 80-year track record of innovating in all of the materials we make and sell. Even today, we're still the leader globally after nearly 80 years of invention and continual renewal. So that concept was always part of our value set. And we held on to it. We have three very simple values. The first is to be curious, and that curiosity embodies what we mean by research and understanding market needs. To be courageous, because we had to stand on our own 2 feet, and to be colorful, partly inspired by the color of the SDGs, but also inspired by a natural human wish. Colorfulness is about diversity, it's about inclusion, it's about accepting different points of view. So the mindset shift we were looking for was more about not just asking the question why in a curious way, but asking why not. So when you think of some of these breakthroughs, you have to have a bit of a dream almost. You have to be able to change the mindset. So we were very proud of our past because it was one of great history, and I mean the Bayer history is a very famous one. But we didn't want to be bound by that. And that was very important because we had a lot of employees who'd had maybe 4 or 5 generations of family members working for the company. We didn't want to unite them against the parent. Rather, we wanted to build from that and not be bound by it. And a lot of the work was around, what are our dreams? What can we imagine? And one of the great ones that we saw with Bertrand Piccard as we sponsored and built parts of his airplane that flew around the world. We have a lovely picture of it, and it was on the front of one of the SDG documents that was shown earlier. You can fly around the world without a drop of fuel. Why not? And it's that, getting that why not into people's minds is how you get people to change behavior. You can't achieve the future goals. You can't achieve breakthrough with old behaviors. You have to change the way in which you're going to behave.
And without being provocative about the age of the stage, I think we're none of us are in the first blush of life. From a culture point of view, Jean, do you see real impetus from the younger generation that you invite into 3M, Covestro, or SAP? Is that where the energy is coming from, do you think?
To a great extent, the energy is coming from the millennial generation, and they're forcing us to think about things differently than we have before. They're really interested in what we're doing around the SDGs, and they're also very interested in how we're combining social impact with business impact. So that, which is something I greatly appreciate, because I think that many of our products and services do provide a social impact. We just haven't really thought about it or measured it. But to bring the two together to think about business with purpose, and from our vision statement, improving lives, 3M innovation to improving every life, has really been our purpose for everything that we do. And the younger generation really helps us to think hard about that and brings a sense of pride for who we are and what we do. Because I can honestly say every 3M product that we make improves someone's life somehow, and in particular, a Post-it note.
It's worth, just in case the audience doesn't know the story about Post-it notes, go on. That was one of the most...
You're going to let me tell the Post-it notes?
Yeah, do it. Go on, okay. For fun. It's innovation. It may be old.
Well, I assume everyone here knows what a Post-it note is. It's an innovation from 3M in the late 70s, early 80s. And it's a great example of employee incentive, employee drive to do something different and think differently about things. And it's also a change of how you think about a mistake versus an innovation. So there was two people. One spent silver. His job was to make adhesives. So he was an adhesive chemist making adhesives that stuck things together that you couldn't get apart. So he was making adhesives one day in his laboratory, and he made an adhesive that didn't do what he expected it to do. It actually, he could put it onto things and it came apart. And he thought he had made a mistake or had a failure, but then he thought about it some more and said, he was a creative person, and said, well, maybe there's a way to use this and benefit from it, but I don't know what it is, but I'm going to put it over here. I'm going to kind of shop it around to the product development team and see what they think. So there's a product development person, Art Fry, who he sang in a choir, and every time he stood up to sing, all the page markers from his hymnal would drop onto the floor. So the two of them got together, and Spence said, I have an adhesive that doesn't always stick. It sticks, but doesn't always stick. And Fry says, I'd like to put something in the hymnal that keeps my marker there that I can stand up, but it won't pull out the ink from the hymnal, from the page. So they put the two together. I mean, this is an actual true story. They put the two together and created Post-it notes, which is still today. It sticks when you want it to stick, but you can take it off and doesn't destroy anything.
I love the story because it's a perfect example of how if we only seek to innovate in very small groups, if we only look to break through in very small groups, we'll miss every opportunity going. We'll come back to this later. The importance was two different people with very, very different outlooks and different needs coming together and different skills to create a thing that had never ever been required before, and yet is globally popular. So if we think about, not just breaking out and innovating within our own organizations or our near supply chain, if we think about rising up and transcending our current business models, that's a big challenge for many of us. I think we've got the lower part moving now. Moving up is more difficult. Alex, you've got a great new job title as the patron of the UN Global Compact's new action platform on decent works in global supply chains. It's quite a mouthful. I think that's an example of something that transcends the status quo. Could you talk to us about it? Because if we can get culture right in global supply chains, then we're winning.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very happy to announce this week a partnership between SAP, Ariba, and the UN Global Compact, and specifically being the patron for the platform, action platform to decent work. Why is it so important? It's a little bit the story about two parties coming together. I met Lisa here in New York City, and she was talking about what she wants to do with UN Global Compact. And obviously, we were thinking about how can we support such a purpose, but also recognizing that this purpose is so important for us within SAP, but also so important for our customers. And I think it's exactly to what you spoke about with the Post-it note, is basically bringing one-on-one together and saying, how can we actually work together? Because for UN Global Compact to actually have impact on the supply chain, to actually provide visibility into topics like forced labor, to tackle some of these massive issues that exist in supply chains, you need data, you need transparency. Every speaker who was on stage here talked about the fact that this is something that business needs. And obviously, as a software company, we build solutions to do this. And my view is, right now, the challenges the world faces are exponential. They're very, very large challenges. And I think Patrick mentioned it. I don't think that the current behaviors, the current thinkings will be solutions for providing actually solutions for this. So we can't think incremental. We need to think, what is exponential change going to look like? And if you think about anything on the consumer side, if you think about Uber, Airbnb, Facebook, they all drive exponential growth, exponential change. Why? Because they're all connected. They all leverage, the connectedness of the society and bring societal, business, and government together. And this is really what I think UN Global Compact is a platform for. This is why we are very proud to partner with them. And that's why we believe that the technology that we drive as a company building software to support transparency is absolutely fundamental. But we don't do it alone. We work with great organizations like NGOs like Made in a Free World, Summer Source, and others together to actually provide content into the moments where companies like Covestro or 3M actually make purchasing decisions. And this is why when we partner with companies like Johnson & Johnson, JP Morgan, they all want to know who is actually in my supply chain. And we provide, during the process of actually purchase, the purpose. And so we call it purchase to purpose. And how do you achieve this inside a large enterprise? So we're very excited for this week. So I know it's a mouthful, but it actually does something.
It's an important mouthful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think it really is heartening to see large global organizations in the software and the reporting space actually getting behind things, because otherwise we're going to talk about this forever. We'll have Excel solutions. It won't be integrated with the entire supply chain.
Yeah.
So once again, 10 years ago you were too early. Now you're absolutely perfect.
I
So we
appreciate
take
that.
our hat off to
So
SAP
thank
on
you.
this.
Thank you so much.
Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you.
It's worth moving for a moment, I think, to technology and the innovation side itself. My company is an innovation technology company. I can boast for hours about it. I won't. I know the three of you are in the same space. And I know that many of us, one of the speakers this morning talked about elegant stealing. I've always called elegant stealing borrowing with pride. I think it's a more positive way to look at it, borrowing with pride. So I know we all borrow with pride. I know that we all do some really cool stuff. When we talk about breaking through, it is so much more. It's about new business models. It's about creating a business model or something that doesn't exist today. And yet we all see technology as such an important part of that, and you're three technology companies in your own right. So this is the boasting opportunity. Jean, if you don't mind, talk to us about some of the really cool stuff coming down the pike in 3M that might make a difference for the world.
Well, we've always got really cool stuff. That's easy to talk about. I mentioned the glass bubbles because that's one thing that we're really very proud of and is making a difference in the marketplace. We also make products that are in filtration systems for water, municipal water systems, or in-home water systems. We're very proud of the innovation that we were able to accomplish recently for Flint, Michigan, to create a media that actually filters out lead down to a very low level, that it takes lead down to a level below regulatory requirements. So there's an example of an innovation. We saw a need in the marketplace caused by an unfortunate event, and our scientists directly went after that and created a filtration system to help in that community. And we actually donated systems to the community to be able to do that. But our products, thank you, our products can do that, take out many different types of contaminants in water, and we do that on a regular basis for our customers. Another product I like to talk about is, it's not very glamorous, but it's a very important product in developing countries where they're trying to bring power out into very rural areas where they've never had power before. For instance, in China, very remote areas of China where they've never had electricity. We create and have innovated a cable that has a much higher electricity capacity in it, and the cable itself sags less on the distance between two towers. So it can actually go a longer distance between towers and deliver the same amount of electricity, but a farther distance into very rural areas that can be accomplished more effectively than you can do with a normal cabling system. So we see a lot of developing countries using that. One more example, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Novec fluids. This is a very innovative fluid that we create that goes into systems, particularly in data centers. We all know that data centers create a lot of heat in the processing of the machines, the computers, and processing of the data. In order to remove that heat, commonly today water is used. So it's water taken out of a municipal water system, runs through pipes, collects the heat, and goes into a river. It's not always cool before it goes into the river, so it creates some environmental concern. We created a fluid that actually can be in a closed loop system that is a heat sink. This fluid is a very engineered design fluid that takes in that heat and will carry it away, go through a cooling system, and then the fluid can be used again. So it becomes a closed loop system that is used continuously and doesn't have to use municipal water or any water at all.
And from what I read, is significantly more environmentally friendly as well than,
Yes.
than previous solutions, right?
Right. We do a life cycle assessment on all of our, many of our products to make sure that whatever energy or greenhouse gas emissions we create in the manufacturing of the product is more than offset in the customer use. So in the total life cycle of the Novec fluids, we know for a fact that in the use of that fluid far exceeds. So it has a much greater social benefit that overcomes what energy we use to produce it. So we always make sure that we find that balance, because we don't want to be creating a bigger problem, but be really creating a solution for the society.
Fantastic. Alex, you can see where this is going. I think lots of people in the audience think of SAP as a software company, and I think that's fundamentally wrong. I see you as at least two wonderful things. One is the glue between organizations that want to innovate. Yeah. And the other one is really the platform that can allow great ideas, great technologies to transcend today. Do you want to talk about some of the examples you're pursuing right now?
You know, we actually went through an exercise where we also mapped our activities to the SDGs, and I think there's examples for each one of them. And obviously we provide enabling technologies, so for companies like Covestro or 3M, for instance, to do some of this amazing work. And so we have some work that we're obviously very proud of in areas like, for instance, cancer research based on the SAP HANA platform that actually provides real-time analytics to cancer patients to actually identify ways to treat the cancer. But I think the one thing that I probably as an employee are very, very proud of is, and it relates to the topic of culture, is what we have done around inclusion in terms of the workforce. And obviously one topic we just talked about is generational inclusion between millennials and different generations. There's also the aspect of gender diversity. We just hit our goal of 25% of women in management, which we're very proud of. But the other topic that has really changed SAP is actually autism. So we opened up positions in our development organization for people on the autistic spectrum. We opened up about 8 positions, and we received over 1,000 resumes. You know? And then over time, we found out that there's a large population, obviously, of people on the autistic spectrum that have incredible skill sets to do software quality, that look at user experience, and that have skill sets that are very, very valuable to us. So we set a goal that by 2020, we want 1% of our workforce to be on the autistic spectrum. And so we were very, very proud of this, because I think it changes the culture. It changes what a manager needs to do in an organization. And I think it supports the world about being inclusive and driving greater equality.
But let's... Which is admirable. I have someone in my family who does exactly that kind of job, not with you, but he'll be applying soon.
Please. Yes.
He will. Yeah. The key thing is you're not doing it out of the kindness of your heart. You're doing it because you found an untapped resource pool as well, who are absolutely fundamentally brilliant at doing their jobs. Yeah. It helps SAP be successful. It helps make more money because we are businessmen, and it's doing good in return. It doesn't need to be one or the other.
Absolutely. I think this notion about doing good by doing well is so true. But just in this instance because one of the engineers in our organization is on the autistic spectrum in my team, and his ability to do the job, he does it at a fraction of the time that anybody else in the organization would do this particular job. Now this changes the requirement on the manager, because the manager now has suddenly an employee who's much quicker and much earlier done with the work, you know? And then how do you actually manage this? But this is transformative in terms of the organization, and it breaks barriers. So we are very, very passionate about this in terms of what it does. And I absolutely believe the reason why people are in this room and the people are spending the time with you in Global Compact is not just out of the goodness of the heart, but also because we can do well by doing good.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think diversity and inclusion, which is really, really important. We are focused on gender. We've spoke about it a lot today, but it's so much bigger.
It is.
It's so much bigger, and we mustn't lose sight of those other aspects of diversity and inclusion that are critically important. Let's move for a moment then to you, Patrick. I've done an awful lot of reading, having not met you before. I think of you as Mr. Carbon. You get very excited about all aspects of carbon. I was reading that you're planning on, or you're making CO2 into plastic, which is a pretty cool thing to do. Would you like to talk about that, but also perhaps what it means for the wider economy, for wider business, and maybe also the societal impact of success?
Well, I think it's a very important thing to change a little bit our mindset about carbon. I do get excited about carbon. I'm always disappointed when people start talking about decarbonisation, because all of us are made out of carbon. The plants are only green because of carbon dioxide. We need carbon, but we need it in the right place. So our goal is to think about where should carbon be. And we worked on a little idea about 10 years ago, and we set up a research centre, which we only put 2 of our own people into. The rest are all postdoctoral research fellows, because as a result of nanotech, the understanding of catalysis in chemistry is taking huge steps forward. And for years, people had said that it should be possible to polymerize carbon dioxide to make a plastic out of carbon dioxide. And we nicknamed this research facility the Dream Reaction Centre. And we wrote down all the dreams we had, and we said, we want you to try and find out how to do this, this, this. And one of them was to turn carbon dioxide into polycarbonate, because we thought that would be easy. That turned out to be impossible, so we had a party and celebrated the failure of that idea. And then we moved on, because we found we could make polyurethane polymers. Polyurethanes people are very familiar with, because you sit on them inside your car, you sleep on them in your mattress. If you have almost any make of mattress in the planet, it's made out of a polyurethane matrix. And we found a way of getting carbon dioxide into that polymer. At the moment, we're roughly at about 20% inclusion. So, and by the way, it's not in the bubbles, okay? So when you lie on the mattress, it doesn't come out again. It's not the fizzy water trick, right? So this is real sequestering of carbon into a polymer matrix. This is a real polymer. And of course, the great news is that it uses carbon dioxide. Even better news is it replaces a very expensive petrochemical feedstock. So the cost of making this material just dropped by 20%. And in theory, we can go up to 40%. We haven't got there yet. But from nothing as just a dream to commercialization was less than 10 years. What did we learn from that? The first is you have to have everybody engaged. Government, research institutes, universities, postdoctoral research experts all over the world, big network. Secondly, what did we learn? You have to change your mind. You know, stop thinking of carbon dioxide as a waste. Carbon dioxide is just as good as any other source of carbon. And if you think of what's becoming called in the industry C1 chemistry, methane and carbon dioxide, 2 critical raw materials which cause huge damage to the climate, these can either be liquefied and chucked in the ground as carbon dioxide sequestration, or actually used as a replacement for oil and gas as a raw material. So we've managed to prove A, that works, B, it's commercially successful, but C, let me come back to demonization. When we started doing the first consumer trials of mattresses and explained to the consumer there was carbon dioxide in the material they would be sleeping on, they were frightened. Because we have done such a good job of demonizing carbon dioxide, they actually don't want it to be in a product. So now you have to think again about how our attitude towards carbon is going to change. And I think towards the end of this session, I'll come back to this theme about carbon, because we've really got to think in the circular economy that what we consider as a waste is no longer a waste. It is simply a raw material for another cycle of operation.
I think the final thing, just to pick up on what you said, was how we as business people can learn from the pure technologists. I've got a bundle in my company. I'm staggered because they keep failing, and they celebrate, and they move on.
Must do.
And if we are going to break through as business people, it's necessary for us to accept failure on the way. And I don't think, certainly in the Western world, that most of the leadership have yet got their mind around that in common business. The fact that it's possible to fail and then in the future succeed.
If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. Let's move to the 4th area. We've spoken about leadership, culture, and technology. Let's touch on collaboration, because it's been spoken about a lot. And it's certainly my thesis that without extensive collaboration, a great deal more than we have in play today, we will not deliver the SDGs within the time frame, or perhaps even at all. So a lot to do there. Jean, 3M have always been a leader. You've very often been a collaborator. Quite often, one of the difficult things in life as a great company is getting your customers to follow, to collaborate, to want to work with you, question one. And the second one is, perhaps in the past, 3M and Covestro would have been seen as competitors, and you would have refused to take the stage together. Is that changing within 3M?
Well, first I'll start by saying that we view everyone as a customer, because I'm quite sure that every single person in this room is a customer of 3M, whether you know it or not. So we always collaborate with our customers, and oftentimes you're using a 3M technology in your cell phone, or a lot of the materials that you carry. So our collaboration is a continuous process. It starts with collaboration, first gaining, as I mentioned, gaining insight from our customers, but then also looking to how we can work across technologies and across companies, most especially with our own customers. So getting our customers sometimes to adopt a new technology can be difficult, because if what they have is working for them, sometimes it can be challenging to take that risk to make a change. So we do a lot of work to try to help our customers understand how these new technologies can make them better and improve on their own products. And so we have what we call customer innovation centers around the world. We have about 50 of them around the world. We operate in 75 countries. And we bring our customers into those innovation centers to actually see our 3M products at work, so they can see examples of how these technologies are working, and how then it's a great idea session, because we bring people into an area that makes them feel like they're in a candy store, because there's all these really cool things that they can look at and try. And all the ideas that come out of that, and see an application, but think that I can do that there, but also I can take this and move it over here and do this with it. So those experiences are probably the most fun I've ever had, is watching our customers in a variety of settings, looking at our technologies and really thinking about how they can do things differently, things that they never thought possible because they didn't know that these existed. So it's a lot of fun to get engaged with, and that's where many of our innovations really come from.
Alex, briefly, one example of how SAP are driving forward, both as an organization and across the wider ecosystem, collaboration.
Yeah, you mentioned collaboration. So within SAP Ariba, we operate the world's largest business-to-business network. We have 2.5 million companies connected that buy and sell from each other. And part of this is obviously that, Covestro suppliers are probably a lot of the same suppliers that 3M has. And, if you look at the information that can actually be shared across all the organizations that are here in the room around their suppliers, that provides real insight. On the consumer side, we do this already on platforms like eBay, et cetera. We give each other ratings, and we know what trust means in an organization. But in the global economy, we need to increase the trust so that globalization can flourish again, and where people know who are you actually doing business with. And I think technology is very, very critical for this. And I think there's an urgency to do this now and not to wait. And I think the technologies are out there, the capabilities are there. But I think now it's the resolve to take advantage of them to move business forward.
And perhaps learn from the individual to individual models that we've built. It's stronger trust there today than perhaps business to business.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's information. I mean, ultimately, I think Paul Pullman mentioned this morning from Unilever, 80,000 suppliers. How many do you really manage? How much insight do you really have? But guess what? Out of these 80,000 suppliers, a lot of other businesses do business with those 80,000 suppliers. And today the technologies exist to actually scale this in a global marketplace that's digital and transparent.
Fantastic. Patrick, briefly, Covestro are working on methods to measure carbon productivity. I know you have a tool. You're going to open source it, I believe, which for those who don't know, open source is give it away for free, which is fantastic. What system-wide change are you looking to drive through, in essence, collaboration on IP that you've created?
Well, I think the thought process went roughly in the direction like this. So we thought you need to use carbon intelligently. Therefore, you need to borrow it for a part of its life to use usefully in a way that gives you a positive return. So just as you all think of return on capital employed, we think of return on carbon employed. We use the same language that you would use in a financial world to describe carbon. End of life becomes the terminal value in the calculation of its carbon productivity. So we've built a consortium with loads of people who are very, very knowledgeable in this area. And we realized there was a missing metric. There was something which isn't helpful in thinking about carbon, and that is the concept of carbon productivity, a much more positive way of thinking. So if I invest carbon in the insulation in my house, I get it paid back 70 times in the life of the house. So carbon invested gives a positive payback. If I invest carbon into my refrigerator to protect the food chain, I get a payback of roughly 20 to 30 times in the life of the refrigerator. So this idea of investing carbon rather than demonizing it is very, very powerful. And I'd much rather people use the term low carbon energy rather than decarbonization, because it's not actually the right way of thinking about it. So you've got to keep the carbon alive. It's a useful material. It sits in the ecosystem and it comes back and has to be closed looped at the end of the day in a circular economy. The tool that we've launched, and please go and visit carbonproductivity.com. It's there. It's fully up and filled with a lot of information. Please copy and paste the charts. Think again about how you're using carbon in your supply chains, linking to the SAP story, because this is how you then think about holistic supply chains, how carbon is coming in as energy, how carbon is coming in as raw materials. We've decided to open source it. It's got examples of use. You can compare the use of different materials in different applications using life cycle data. So you can start to find the best investment case for your carbon. And that is the change in mindset. We need to invest carbon wisely and intelligently, and the metric is carbon productivity. The Industrial Revolution was human productivity, and carbon productivity was ignored. Now we have to concentrate on carbon productivity if we're going to deliver the Sustainable Development Goals.
Fantastic. So a brief summary, I think what we've heard, we heard actually from Paul Pullman this morning, courageous leadership at this time is what is required. We would agree. Taking risks and looking to transcend the status quo driven by leadership is absolutely critical if we're going to succeed. The culture can and has to change, but in fact there's impetus from those joining our businesses who want to make it happen. So it's a case of making it happen, not pulling people along. And by collaborating, we can rise up and come up with new business models, new ways of working that deliver not only the societal changes that we spent a lot of this morning talking about, but also the commercial benefits to organizations such as yours. I was heartened this morning to hear about both the blueprint for leadership, which I think we've all desperately needed in business at least. That's an asset we need to go and grab. And secondly, the whole business reporting piece that we heard just after lunch, which will give us a framework. So I think we all need to go and grab those. For now, I feel inspired. I'd like to say thank you to the three of you. If you'd like to join me in just thanking the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Very good. Thank you so much.